Welcome back. This is a full digital SAT reading and writing module. 27 questions. Walk through the way a tutor marks them up. Pause on each question, try it, then watch the markup. Here's a vocabulary question, and the trick is always the same. Let the sentence define the word for you. The passage says Mexia found the work a certain way, then immediately explains what it means. Each unfamiliar fern and orchid renewed her energy rather than draining it. So we need a word that means energizing. Now let's test the others. Tolerable just means barely bearable, not energizing at all. Cross it out. Agreeable means pleasant, but that's too weak for renewing her energy. That one's gone. And demanding means draining, the exact opposite of what we want. Strike that too. That leaves invigorating, which literally means giving energy and vitality. Invigorating is the only word that captures work that renews your energy instead of draining it. The lesson here. In vocabulary questions, the sentence usually defines the answer for you. Read the evidence around the blank before you ever look at the choices. Here's a vocabulary question. The museum wing was meant to celebrate local pottery, but its design did something to that goal. Notice the clues that follow. Dim lighting drained the glazes, and the cases were spaced too far apart to suggest any shared tradition. The design worked against its own purpose. Test each option. Delayed implies the goal was just postponed and still on its way, but the design actively defeated it, so it's off the list. Questioned suggests raising doubt, yet a building's design can't pose a question, so cut it out. Overstated means exaggerated, which is the opposite of falling short. That dies too. Undermined means to weaken or work against, exactly what this design does. Undermined is right because the design defeats its own stated purpose, draining the color and scattering the collection instead of unifying it. The takeaway, when every detail works against a stated goal, you want a word that means weaken, not slow down or exaggerate. This hard vocab question hinges on one blank. Critics called the quartet's incoherent scribbling, but the passage flips that charge. What looked like disorder actually hid an architecture of remarkable rigor. So the blank needs a word saying this design was planned, not random. Spontaneous means impulsive and unplanned. That's the critic's charge, not the rebuttal. Scratch that one. Conventional means ordinary, but these quartets shocked listeners as strange. Not this one either. Modest talks about scale, not intention, so it never answers the incoherence. Gone as well. Deliberate means intentional and designed, exactly what opposes random scribbling. Deliberate wins because it directly contradicts the accusation. The wandering phrases always returned, transformed. That is intention, not accident. The takeaway? On contrast vocab questions, pick the word that flips the charge made against the subject. Here's a hard vocabulary question. Look at how the reformers feel about these asylums. They praised them as humane refuges. Now notice the turn. The historian Vane resists such accounts. So the blank has to describe accounts that glorify their subject, the one-sided praise she's pushing back on. Start with exhaustive. That means thorough and complete, but the complaint isn't that the accounts were too detailed, it's that they were too flattering. Cross it out. Tentative means hesitant or unsure, but this praise was confident and emphatic, not cautious. That one's gone. Obscure means hard to understand, yet the praise was public and clear. Strike that too. That leaves celebratory, accounts that glorify their subject. That's our answer. Celebratory nails it. The reformers praised the asylums as humane refuges, and Vane resists exactly that glowing one-sided picture. The takeaway, in vocabulary questions, let the surrounding clues define the blank. Here, praise pointed straight to celebratory. Here we need the main purpose of the whole text. Notice how it opens with what many gardeners assume, then pivots. The biologist offers a different reading of that midday drooping. That move from a wrong assumption to a correction is the engine of the passage, so the purpose lives right there. Choice B advises gardeners when to water, but the text gives no watering advice at all. Off the list. Choice C only compares day and evening looks. That's one supporting detail, not the main point. Cut it. Choice D claims these plants are superior, a ranking the text never makes. That dies too. A nails it. It corrects the misreading by framing the droop as adaptation. Right, the passage takes a common assumption and overturns it, recasting the wilting as a smart adaptation, not a cry for water. Takeaway: when a text opens with what people assume, the purpose is almost always to correct that assumption. This is a main purpose question, so we want the big idea, not a stray detail. Watch what the passage actually claims. The reader comes to feel the very stillness the poem refuses to name, and the closer seals it. Form here performs what statement withholds. The whole point is how the poem works, not what it says. A says the poet is more skilled than her contemporaries, but the text never compares her to anyone. Scratch that one. B just catalogs nouns and articles, which is the evidence, not the purpose. Not this one either. D traces the influence of earlier poetry, which the passage never mentions. Gone as well. That leaves C. It explains how the poem's formal choices enact a stillness it never states. C is right because the passage shows form doing the work. Thinning lines and white gaps make us feel a stillness the poem never names. Takeaway: on purpose questions chase what the text is doing, not the details it uses to do it. Main purpose questions ask what the whole passage is doing, not just one detail. So watch the shape here. The passage opens with an old view. Economists once treated the household as a single decision maker. Then it pivots. Recent scholarship complicates this picture and lands on a new view, a site of ongoing negotiation. Now the choices. A describes specific spending patterns, but the passage never lists any patterns. That shift is just evidence, not the point. Cross it out. C recommends collecting more data, which the passage never urges. That one's gone. D explains why families disagree, but this is a model of decision-making, not a story about conflict. Strike that too. B challenges the older model and replaces it with negotiation. That's the purpose. B is right because the passage sets up the old model, says scholarship complicates it, and replaces it with negotiation. That's a challenge and replace structure. Takeaway: on purpose questions follow the passage's overall move, not its juiciest detail. Main idea questions want the whole passage boiled down to one sentence, not a single detail. So what's the through line here? A returning bee dances, the others read the code, and one bee's find becomes shared knowledge for the entire colony. That last move, from one discovery to the whole group, is the heart of it. A says most animals that live in groups use dance. The passage only talks about honeybees, so that overgeneralizes. Off the list, B describes the angle to the sun. True, but just one detail, not the main point. Cut it. C claims bees can't remember routes and rediscover food every trip, which the text never says. That dies too. D names the dance as communication that turns one bee's find into colony-wide knowledge. That's our answer. D works because it captures the full arc the passage builds, from one bee's discovery to knowledge the whole colony can use. The takeaway: for main idea questions, pick the choice that covers the whole passage, not one true detail. Here we need the main idea of the whole text, not just one true fact. Watch this turn. The passage says the press's first effect was not a flood of new ideas. What changed was scale and uniformity, identical copies placed in distant cities. That two-part move is the heart of it. Now, the choices. B says the earliest printed books were almost all religious works. True, but that is just one example. Scratch that one. C says scholars in Venice and Paris disagreed about their books, a supporting detail, not the point, not this one either. D claims every intellectual revolution depends on printing. Way too broad, gone as well. That leaves A, which names both the stable texts and the bigger transformation. A is right because it captures the passage's two-part claim. Uniform, stable texts came first, and only then did the comparing and disputing reshape thought. For main idea questions, pick the choice that covers the whole arc, not one true detail. Here's a command of evidence question. The ecologists concluded that birds are the main reason bright-fruited plants spread, acting as the agents carrying these seeds to new ground. To support that cause, we want a finding that ties the birds directly to the pattern. Choice A says the birds also eat insects. Interesting, but that tells us nothing about spreading seeds, so cross it out. Choice B says bright fruits pack more sugar, which might explain why birds like them, but not that birds do the spreading, so that one's gone. Choice D talks about plant height, which is unrelated to dispersal, so strike that too. Choice C is the winner. Where fruit-eating birds are absent, the bright fruit advantage disappears. Choice C nails it. Take the birds away, and the advantage bright fruit normally enjoys vanishes, which pins the spreading squarely on the birds. The takeaway for command of evidence: support a causal claim by showing the effect disappears once the cause is gone. Here's a command of evidence question. The archaeologist finds houses clustered around one big building, stuffed with huge storage jars, and she concludes the community pooled its grain centrally and then shared it back out. Our job is to find the finding that most directly backs that pooling claim. Choice A says the building used the same mud brick techniques as the homes, same style, zero grain evidence, so off the list. Choice C notes it was occupied for 3 centuries, but the duration tells us nothing about sharing, so cut that one. Choice D points to similar buildings in neighboring regions, a regional pattern, not this community pooling, so that dies too. Choice B traces the jar residues to many different households. That's the winner. Choice B is the only finding that directly shows grain flowing from across the community into those central jars, exactly the pooling the archaeologist claimed. With evidence questions, match the finding to the precise conclusion, not just the general topic. Here's a command of evidence question, and the conclusion is causal. The researchers say the belief that information is stored externally weakens memory, and crucially that this is independent of how much attention people pay. So we need the finding that pins the cause on belief, not on attention. Choice A says the words were equally easy. That rules out one alternative, but it doesn't show belief is doing the work. Scratch that one. Choice B brings in years of schooling, which is off topic. Not this one either. Choice C says the saved group looked slightly less, but that hands the gap to attention, which undermines the claim. Gone as well. That leaves D when both groups thought the list failed. Recall was nearly identical. D is the answer. By making both groups believe the same thing, that the list didn't save, it isolates the belief and shows that's what drives the gap, not attention. Takeaway: support a causal claim by ruling out the rival cause. Here's an inference question asking us to complete the blank. Look at the key line. The town has stayed the same, but the narrator herself is the one who has changed. So whatever fills the blank has to locate the gap inside her, not in the place around her. Choice B says the harbor was rebuilt, but the passage says it matches her memories exactly, so cross it out. Choice C claims the townspeople forgot her, which the text never states. That one's gone. Choice D says her memories were inaccurate, yet they proved accurate, so strike that too. That leaves A. The gap lies in herself, a stranger to an unchanged town. A is right because the passage explicitly puts the change in the narrator, not the town. The takeaway: when a passage spells out what stayed the same and what changed, the blank almost always points straight at the thing that changed. This is an inference question, and the passage is one big comparison. 2 cities face the very same jump in fuel prices. One city has an extensive subway system, so its driving drops fast. The other has no practical alternative, so people keep driving. Same hike, completely opposite results. So whatever completes this blank must capture that difference. Now run the choices. A blames the average income of each city, but income is never mentioned, off the list. B leans on how soon prices might fall again, speculation the passage never raises, so cut that one. D points to the registered cars before the increase, a number nobody counts, that dies too. C says whether residents have a workable substitute for driving, and that is exactly the subway versus nothing contrast. C is our answer. C is right because both cities faced the identical price increase, yet driving only dropped where a subway offered a real way out. The lesson: when a passage builds a contrast, the answer names the one thing that actually differs. This is a punctuation question, so we hunt for where a boundary belongs. Before the blank sits a complete idea. The instrument could track the planets. What follows renames that whole idea, a feat that astonished researchers. That's an appositive, and it needs a comma in front to set it off. Choice A drops the comma entirely, fusing two parts into a run-on. Scratch that one. Choice C adds a second comma after feat, but that astonished researchers is a restrictive clause you can't cut off. Not this one either. Choice D makes both mistakes at once. No comma where we need it, an extra one where we don't. Gone as well. That leaves B with a single comma after planets. B sets off the appositive with one comma and keeps the restrictive that clause intact. When a phrase renames the whole idea before it, mark the front of it with a single comma and never split a that clause that's essential. Here's a boundaries question, so I want to know what kind of punctuation belongs in the gap. Look at what sits on either side of the blank. Before it, he believed everyday black speech deserved a place in serious literature. After it, this conviction set him apart. Two full sentences bumping right into each other. So we need to join two complete sentences. Choice B gives no punctuation at all, leaving a fused run-on. Cross it out. Choice C uses just a comma, which only makes a comma splice. That one's gone. Choice D keeps that comma and adds an extra one that cuts the subject off from its verb. Strike that too. Only a semicolon joins two full sentences cleanly. The answer is A. A semicolon is exactly the tool for this job. It links two closely related complete sentences without needing a conjunction. The takeaway: when two full sentences sit side by side and you have no joining word, reach for a semicolon, never a lone comma. This is a boundaries question, so first I check what sits on each side of the blank. Before it, we have a complete thought. Her research documented a troubling decline in coral reefs. After it, another complete thought about reefs, now bleached and silent. Two full sentences meeting means we need a real boundary here. Choice A drops a comma before that is, but a comma can't hold two independent clauses together. Comma splice, off the list. Choice B gives no punctuation at all, so the clauses fuse into one run-on. Cut it. Choice C strips the set-off commas and still has no boundary. That dies too. Choice D uses a colon to introduce the elaboration, then sets off that is with a comma. That's the answer. The colon does the heavy lifting here, introducing the elaboration that follows, while the comma after that sets off the transition cleanly. Takeaway: when one complete sentence is about to explain itself, reach for a colon, not a comma. Here's a boundaries question, and the blank sits right where two ideas meet. Read it slowly. Critics dismissed her sketches as unbuildable is a complete sentence, and many of her boldest designs went unbuilt is another complete sentence. Two independent clauses joined by the word, and that one observation decides the punctuation. Now eliminate. Choice A puts a comma before and a comma after the conjunction, but that second comma wrongly cuts an off from its clause. Scratch that one. Choice B drops the comma before and tucks one after instead, backwards. Not this one either. Choice D gives us, and with no comma at all, leaving a run-on, gone as well. That leaves C, with the comma right before and. C is right because a compound sentence, two independent clauses joined by a coordinating conjunction, takes exactly one comma placed before the conjunction. The takeaway: the comma goes before the and, never after it. This is a standard English conventions question about subject-verb agreement. It's tempting to grab the word right before the blank flamingos and pick a plural verb. But the true subject here is a colony, a singular collective noun sitting inside that prepositional phrase. Keep your eye on it. Look at choice A. gather, it's plural, so it wrongly agrees with flamingos instead of the colony. Cross it out. Choice C, are gathering, is plural as well, so that one's gone. And D, have gathered, is plural and jumps to the present perfect tense. Strike that too. That leaves the singular verb our singular subject needs, B, gathers. B, gathers, is correct because the subject is the singular collective noun, a colony, not the plural flamingos hiding in the prepositional phrase. The takeaway: ignore the nouns between the subject and the verb and match the verb to the real subject. This is a verb tense question, so the whole passage is your clock. Look at how it opens. Franklin produced her famous images. She captured the evidence, and her data proved essential. Every verb is simple past, so whatever fills the blank has to match that established time frame. Now run each choice against that past time clock. B is never receiving, is present progressive, off the list. C, never receives, is plain present tense, so cut it. D, will never receive, jumps to the future for events already finished. That dies too. A, never received, is simple past, and it's the only choice that matches. Answer A. The passage locks every action into the early 50s with produced, captured, and proved, so the blank takes simple past as well, never received. Takeaway: in tense questions, let the surrounding verbs set the clock and make the blank match them. Here's an inverted sentence, and the blank needs a verb. Notice that the real subject doesn't come before the blank. It comes after. Silk, spices, paper, and precious metals. That's a plural list, so the verb has to agree with it, not with anything in front. Choice A drops the verb completely, leaving a fragment. Scratch that one. Choice C uses being, a participle, not a real verb, so the clause still has no predicate. Not this one either. Choice B gives us was, but that's singular and our subject is a plural list. Gone as well. That leaves D, were, the plural verb the inverted subject demands. D is right because this is an inverted sentence. The plural compound subject sits after the verb, so it takes the plural were. The takeaway: when a sentence flips the normal order, find the real subject before you pick the verb. Here's a transitions question. The first sentence says the mole rat lives underground, where seeing well offers little advantage. Then comes the blank, and right after it, we learn the animal's eyes have shrunk and its vision has grown poor. Ask how the second idea relates to the first. For instance, would introduce an example, but the second sentence is a consequence, not an illustration. Cross it out. However, signals contrast, yet the poor vision doesn't oppose the dark tunnels, it follows from them. That one's gone. Likewise compares two similar cases, but we have one cause and one effect. Strike that too. As a result, names the cause and effect perfectly, so C is our answer. As a result works because the dark, vision-useless environment is the cause, and the shrunken eyes are the direct effect. When the second sentence is the outcome of the first, reach for a cause and effect transition. We need the transition that fits the blank. The first sentence celebrates a huge milestone. Florence Price was the first African-American woman to have a symphony performed by a major orchestra. Then the second sentence says her manuscripts were forgotten for decades. Success, then obscurity. That's a contrast. Therefore signals a result, but being forgotten isn't caused by her success. Off the list. In addition, would keep adding to the praise, but the tone flips negative. Cut it. For example, needs the second sentence to illustrate the first, and it doesn't. That dies too. Yet is our contrast word. It's the answer. Yet is right because it marks the surprising opposition, a historic first, and yet decades of obscurity. The takeaway: when a sentence reverses the direction of the one before it, reach for a contrast transition like yet, but, or however. Here's a transition question, so our job is to read the logic on both sides of the blank. Before it, we learn that widening roads just invites more drivers and congestion comes right back. After it, the writer concludes a city should improve transit instead. That's evidence leading to a result. Similarly signals a parallel example, but we're drawing a conclusion, not adding a matching case. Scratch that one. Nevertheless, and on the other hand, both signal contrast, yet the ending agrees with the finding rather than fighting it. Not this one either, and gone as well. That leaves consequently, which correctly signals a result that follows from the evidence. Consequently works because the conclusion flows directly from the evidence. Widening just invites more cars, so the city should turn to transit. Takeaway here, when the second sentence is the payoff of the first, reach for a result word. Here's a transitions question, and a tricky one. The passage says a sterile layer contains almost nothing, sounds completely worthless. But the next sentence flips it. These empty strata are far from useless. The text builds a low expectation, then reverses it. So the blank needs a word that signals a turn. Let's run the choices. Meanwhile, signals two things happening at the same time, but we're correcting one idea, not juggling two scenes. Cross it out. Furthermore, adds a similar point, yet we're pushing back, not piling on. That one's gone. In short, summarizes what came before, but this sentence brings a brand new opposing idea. Strike that too. That leaves still, which concedes the emptiness and then delivers the surprising counterpoint. Still is the answer. It concedes that sterile layers look empty, then signals the surprising payoff. They actually reveal when a site was abandoned. Takeaway: when a sentence admits a point and then turns against it, reach for a concession word like still. Here the student wants to emphasize a difference in how the two animals use their light. That's the whole job. Show a contrast, and specifically in how they use it, not in what they are. So watch for a choice about purpose. Choice of contrasts where the animals live and what they are, habitat and class, not how they use their light, off the list. Choice B says both are bioluminescent, a similarity, not a difference. Cut it. Choice D defines the term and points to what they share. That dies too. Choice C draws the contrast in purpose, mates versus prey. Choice C nails it. It names a real difference. Fireflies light up to attract mates, anglerfish to lure prey, exactly the contrast in purpose the goal asked for. When the goal says difference, reject every similarity and every off-topic contrast. This is a rhetorical synthesis question, so everything rides on the goal. The student wants to explain the canal's economic impact on shipping. That tells us the right answer has to deliver numbers about cost and speed, not background details or side effects. Keep that goal in mind as we test the choices. Choice A just gives the opening date and route, scratch that one. Choice D only describes how slow things were before the canal, setting up the problem without explaining the impact, not this one either. Choice C jumps to New York, becoming the busiest port, a downstream effect rather than the shipping costs themselves. Gone as well. That leaves B, which pairs the 90% cost cut with the drop from weeks to days. B wins because it uses the two notes that actually measure economic impact, the cost cut and the time savings, and ties them to the economics of moving goods. The takeaway: match the choice to the stated goal and favor the data that measures it directly. That's the full module. The printable PDF of this exact test is linked below. Print it, take it cold, then come back and check your work. New modules and marked up walkthroughs every week.